Hi, everybody. Brian Norcross here with a 5 p.m. Monday update on what's going on here with Hurricane Erin. We don't have any big changes this afternoon because the hurricane hunters haven't been in there measuring the storm here in the last few hours. We can see on the satellite, however, that there's some flattening on the top here. We also see these arc clouds, they're called, emanating. That means there's dry air in here that's being pushed into the storm. It's disrupting it some. National Hurricane Center is still holding it at 140 miles per hour and 937 pressure. That was the last measurement a few hours ago, and we'll get more measurements here coming up in the next few hours. Moving northwest now, so it's made the turn, and it's going to be leaving the vicinity of the Bahamas, moving north of the Bahamas, begun that turn to the north. It was forecast. It is right on track, and the track forecast is very confident. This is not going to be a direct hit from the core of the storm and those 140 mile an hour winds or whatever winds it has. But it's a very, very dangerous storm and is going to have a dramatic effect on large parts of the east coast of the U.S. All right, let's look at it close up here. And we can make out in the clouds, see those kind of tall clouds there? That's part of the eye wall. It looks like it doesn't have a complete eye wall at the current time. As I said, dry air being pushed into the storm. But the storm is strong enough to push back, so it's maintaining its circulation, and the forecast is for that dry air push to let up in another 6 hours, 6 to 12 hours. Here you can see when we enhance the clouds, we can see where the bands are. These are those bands, the kind of bands here that caused the very strong gusty winds in the Virgin Islands yesterday. You might have seen the video of that in Puerto Rico and the heavy rain. So this is across the Turks and Caicos in the southeastern Bahamas, and you can see as the storm lifts in that direction, some of these bands might affect farther north in the Bahamas as well. So because of that, they have where you see the red there, that's the tropical storm warning in effect, southeastern Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and then a watch, meaning possible winds of 40 miles per hour or higher in the central Bahamas. This yellow area is where the National Hurricane Center says the winds of 40 miles per hour or higher are happening. Not in the entire area, but if they're going to happen, in theory, they're happening in that area. And then here, hurricane force gusts, and then here, hurricane force sustained winds. And of course, we have a Category 4 hurricane still underway. Thankfully, it's well offshore and moving away from the Bahamas. Here is the forecast. You see that by tomorrow morning, they're still continuing at 140. We'll see when the hurricane hunters go in there this evening and overnight what they report, and maybe they'll adjust these. But in any case, the key is not so much the wind speed. It is forecast the top winds are forecast to come down slowly, but the storm is growing in size, and the larger the storm, the more it pushes the water toward the coast, and the more strong swells go toward the coast that turn into big waves, eroding waves that cause problems all along the coast. And this is a slow moving storm, so it's going to continue this for a good while. So here's the cone. You can see how slow it is. So there it is tomorrow evening. Here it is Wednesday evening. And through this entire time now, you think of the circulation is going like this, right? It's pushing swells toward this southeastern coast down to about Palm Beach County, the Treasure Coast and north, and maybe Palm Beach County to some degree, because the Bahamas kind of block the energy from reaching Miami-Dade and Broward County as much. But Palm Beach County and north all exposed to this, and obviously when you get up in here, it's going to be closer in the Carolinas and especially there Cape Hatteras, very vulnerable Cape Hatteras, closer. And then Thursday, it's still moving relatively slowly, but now once it's up in here, which I'm going to show you in a second, the winds are coming like this, so it's putting the energy farther north up in there. But the idea is that the winds diminish as it moves up this way, but the size grows, so it's pushing more water, has more leverage to push water as it goes. All right, let's look at that. Remember, here are the tropical storm force winds that we have, and here we are tomorrow. And watch as this, watch the size of this. So the diameter of this as we go north. Okay, here we go. Notice it grows as we go, and notice that it fringes here Cape Hatteras. So that's where our tropical storm watch is located. I'll show you the details on that in a second. Notice the wind speed slowly coming down, but the area of hurricane force winds grows and hurricane force gusts. It all grows as we go. That's more energy pushing water, which is going to be the hallmark of this hurricane. How confident are we in this track? Well, take a look. All of the models, the X's are the AI models, the new ones by Google and by the European Center. All the yellow lines, that's the European and the GFS. We look to see how wide a distribution that is to see what the uncertainty is. Notice it's all right up the cone, and the cone is right up the chute between North Carolina and Bermuda over here. It's just so fortunate that we're not dealing with a direct on hit here. We'd have all the other problems plus the wind. We're not going to have the wind except for the fringe effects there in North Carolina. So here's that tropical storm watch in effect from Duck down to Beaufort, North Carolina, and out there on the Outer Banks. This is going to be remember, the tropical storm watch is just for wind. And the wind, they can deal with winds of 40 or 50 miles an hour on the Outer Banks, but it's the water that's the issue. So they've issued a storm surge watch, meaning that the water level can be up to 4 feet above the normal high tide, not the normal high tide, above normal high tide line. So you stand where the normal high tide line is and we go 4 feet of water above that, and then giant waves on top of that. So if you know Cape Hatteras, this is extremely vulnerable here. It's vulnerable to being washed out the north end of the island, north of Rodanthe. Not so much up here, Kill Devil Hills and Nag's Head, but they're still vulnerable there. But that stretch of island in here, it's just very, very vulnerable, and down to Ocracoke Island, which is a separate island. Anyway, storm surge watch for this whole area. Storm surge of 3 feet or so, even up in the tidewater of around Norfolk in Virginia, and all the way down to near Myrtle Beach. So water rise all on the areas from South Carolina on up to Virginia is going to be evident with the giant waves on top of that. So we're looking for coastal damage. And here is what we're using to describe and show this energy in the water. So we're actually predicting here wave heights. Now these aren't the waves that crash on the beach. These are the waves that are out in the ocean. So you have dips and then peaks, of course. And the distance from the dip to the peak is the wave height. So in this case, down in this white area here, we're talking up in the 30-foot range or higher for wave heights. But that's kind of where the maximum energy is from the core of the storm. And then it radiates out. And here you can see in the red areas, look, these are 12, 15-foot waves here where it's red. And then down in the oranges and yellows, 6 to 9 foot waves in there. But this is where we are in the morning tomorrow, and the storm is way down to the south. Now, let's move forward in time, and you can see the energy pushing toward the coast. So tomorrow, by Wednesday morning, so through the day tomorrow, increasing as the energy radiates out from the storm and impacts the coastline here, all the way from central Florida on up to Cape Hatteras, mostly early on Wednesday, confined to the southeastern U.S. But this is a big deal. This is going to be very, very dangerous, eroding. Homes near the coast will no doubt be washed out. I mean, this is going to be a big deal here in this part of the country. Then we move north, and you can see by Thursday morning, the energy starts coming up here north of Cape Hatteras and pushing up toward the northeast, so that by late on Thursday, now we have this core of energy here rotating into this area from New England on down to Cape Hatteras. So we're including the Tidewater, the Delmarva, Jersey Shore, Long Island, over to the Hamptons, Fire Island, on up to the coastlines in Rhode Island and Connecticut into Long Island Sound. All these places are going to get this push of water, of energy. Now, the lines you see here are wind. The energy from the storm radiates out. So the wind and the energy don't necessarily go the same way. So you have to think of the storm as more of a point sending energy, sending swells of like waves within the water, surges of energy out toward the coast. So that's what that's telling us. And then by Friday, this is going to be moving away, but still there is a lot of still swell energy pushing toward the coast, even as the storm is moving away. By the weekend, should be much better. We'll have to see how much is left, how much energy is left in the system by then. So we've got a lot going on with this. This is very hazardous along the coast. Obviously, stay in close touch with your local officials and heed whatever they're telling you have to do to stay safe there right along the beaches and the waterways all up and down the east coast of the U.S. Okay, we have one more system to talk about. This is way down just off of Africa. It's right here right now. It's very disorganized, as you can see, but the Hurricane Center has a 60% chance that it becomes at least a depression. It's fighting with dry air here in its trip across the Atlantic, so the chance that it has is mostly over in here. Now, obviously, that's right on top of the islands, and it's right behind where Erin is right now. Of course, Erin will be gone by the time we're talking about toward the end of the week here. So we'll see what happens here and how it develops. The computer forecasts don't develop anything too significant, but they do bring it near these islands here once again. In terms of where it's going to go next, so here's the deal. Here's the steering that we're dealing with right now. There's Erin. Notice high pressure here, and the high pressure area is there like that. And then there's another high over here like this. And there's a gap in between them that's caused by this low up here. It's created this gap in here. And the Erin is going to go toward that low, and the low is going to move. And then we're going to watch this next disturbance over here and watch it come along. Okay, here we go. This is tomorrow now. Let's go forward in time and watch what happens. This low in the upper right goes away, and it's kind of this flow up here is going to push Erin out to sea. And then when we get to Saturday, the disturbance is somewhere in the vicinity of the islands down here. Now, what's going to happen next? Well, Erin is kind of leaving a gap here. And look, there's another big low coming along to enhance that gap. So the consensus of the computer models is that this thing is going to head north from the islands, depending on what happens down here. But it's really too early to know for sure. If it stays weak, it has a better chance of going farther west. If it gets strong sooner, it has a better chance of going north. We'll see. But in any case, there's another system that we're going to have to watch this week and see what happens. But it doesn't look like development is going to happen until later in the week. But it does look like it'll happen near the islands here. No sign of it being strong, but we'll see. There's a ways to go here with the steering. We're optimistic about the steering, but not certain by any means. All right, that's where we are for today. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on Fox Weather and right here. All right, have a good evening.